Blogging Heads viewers, I am Robert, House of Farley. I am a fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Hereditary Aristocratic Privilege. With me today is Matthew, House of Duss, who is the Tyrion Lannister Chair at the Lannister Enterprise Institute. Matthew is coming to us from King's Landing, where all sorts of interesting things are happening tonight. I am currently embedded at Dragonstone. So what's going on in your world there, Matt? I mean, there's a lot of news coming out of your area.
Excuse me?
There's a lot of stuff coming out of your area. I mean, what's actually the situation there on the ground in King's Landing?
Well, as you've probably heard from the many ravens that we've exchanged, King Joffrey, his beneficence is really being... There seems to be a lack of understanding on the part of the people of how well the good King Joffrey is managing the affairs of the kingdom. Mm-hmm. People don't seem to understand that it's really the imp, Tyrion Lannister, who's kind of screwing things up here. I mean, I think everyone can remember how good things were when King Robert was around, and all of a sudden he died, and Tyrion showed up, and all of a sudden everyone's hungry, and there's this huge war. Mm-hmm. So that's basically it, is that the people are just angry with what's going on, and unfortunately they seem to be directing some of this displeasure toward Joffrey, who I think we can all agree has been an excellent and merciful and beneficent king.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, let's not go so far on what we all agree on quite yet. I mean, we want to keep this a friendly Blogging Heads, but I mean, we should at least talk some of these issues through. I mean, we can all agree that peasants are revolting. Peasants have always been revolting, and that peasants don't necessarily have a what's the word I'm looking for? A reasonable or accurate understanding of the world. But I mean, some other ravens that I've received have told me a much different story about what's going on in King's Landing. I mean, I've heard some people tell it that that Joffrey is just, how should I phrase this? He's a bit young and a bit immature at this point, and that the imp is acting as a leavening influence. I mean, they're all Lannisters or Baratheons. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd really like to hear the name of the people who are sending you those ravens. If you could just send them to me at some other point, because I'd like to pass them along. That's really outrageous and offensive.
Right.
To me, I mean, King Joffrey, his forces, the forces of House Lannister are at glorious war against the rebels, the cannibalistic brute, Robb Stark,
Is he a cannibal? Is he a cannibal? Does he actually eat people?
Yes, that's what I've heard, and I believe, from what I've heard, I think we can just call it straight out fact that this barbarian from the north is just he turns into a wolf, he eats people, it's just out of control, and so King Joffrey has sent the forces of his father up to fight and liberate the people of the north. Mm-hmm. And it really just makes me upset when I hear of these pundits who spread these sort of rumors that King Joffrey doesn't have it all together. It's just kind of this. They're stabbing us in the back, is what they're doing, Rob. They're stabbing us in the back.
Right. No, and I can understand it. I couldn't agree more about the nature of scurrilous press rumors that sort of undermine the morale of the home front. And I wish I could tell you who these, and I'm not going to call them whistleblowers, who these leakers might be coming from King's Landing. But I mean, they do seem to be saying that people there are pretty hungry. I've heard, seen, read maybe a recent claim that the new head of the Gold Cloaks there, the police there, butchered a large number of the citizens without convicting them of any crime. I've even heard from some sources, and again, I can't really reveal. I wish I could. Maybe we can talk about it more in the future under friendlier times. That some people are even welcoming the arrival of Stannis Baratheon, who should be showing up in your environs in just a few days. I mean, so you're saying none of that is true?
Absolutely untrue. The people love Joffrey. They understand that he's got their best interests at heart. they hate the imp. They understand that it's the imp Tyrion who is causing all this trouble. And as for Goldcloaks going around killing people, they're killing terrorists, okay, and saboteurs. That is what they're doing.
Right. Well, I think again that's an entirely reasonable pursuit. Now,
I just want to go. Can I just continue for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
These are bad people that are being killed. So I think King Joffrey owes it to these people to have them killed. I'll go that far.
Now, is there any kind of rehabilitation program for these terrorists? I mean, is there any way that they could, say, swear loyalty to the good and true King Joffrey, and so therefore end whatever unfortunate situation might befall them? Or can they simply hope for a quick death?
Well, it's like, as King Joffrey says, the people are like children. They need to be disciplined, and so this is part of King Joffrey's broader discipline agenda for the people of King's Landing. They need to understand that while their king loves them, he will be very strict should any of them step out of line. So again, he owes it to his people to take harsh measures against these terrorists, and that's what he's done.
All right. So I guess what would you? Do you think there's going to be some? So let's look into the future. Let's make an assumption that King Joffrey prevails over the usurper King Stannis. Do you see some sort of reckoning with the imp here? How could this imp have come to power in this situation where we have obviously the king's mother, where the king's father is perhaps not too far off, but all of the administrators and the bureaucracy is right there. How could this situation have come where the imp has apparently prevailed and beguiled all of these people?
Well, unfortunately, we have a situation where Sir Jaime has been captured by the barbarian rebel Robb Stark. And so Lord Tywin, doing what he thought was right, and all respect to Lord Tywin, who is, again, a wise and just ruler, dispatched Tyrion, his youngest son, to serve as his representative, serve as the hand of the king in his stead while he was off fighting the barbarian rebel terrorist, horrible hater cannibal Robb Stark. But unfortunately, Tyrion seems to have abused that trust and utterly failed in his task to provide for the people of King's Landing and provide for the defense of King's Landing, as far as I can tell. Whereas Cersei and good King Joffrey are doing their utmost to deal with that situation.
Well, I want to back up a second here. So you just suggested that Tyrion Lannister has failed to provide for the defense of King's Landing. Am I hearing a little bit of skepticism? Are you hedging your bets a little bit with regards to what's going to happen when Stannis shows up at the gates of King's Landing?
No, I'm not hedging at all. I have absolutely no doubt that in the end, King Joffrey and his mother, the Queen Regent Cersei, will their wisdom and their love for the people will prevail. But I think it's very important to point out that it is the hand's responsibility to make these preparations, and I have not seen any evidence that he has done so.
That's interesting. Well, hopefully this episode won't air before the battle happens, because we would hate to learn that Stannis Baratheon had gained any military advantage from hearing this conversation about the Imp's failure. Speaking of which, I'm here on Dragonstone. I'm embedded with Stannis' garrison here, which does not mean I have any sympathy. I'm simply a war reporter, strictly neutral in this situation. So obviously my loyalties are to the true king of Westeros, whoever that in the end may be, and I'm sure it'll be Joffrey. So what do you make? We had the situation just not too long ago where there was another Baratheon brother about to march on King's Landing, Renly Baratheon, who was claiming to be king, and then suddenly he just kind of was assassinated in what can only be described as very mysterious circumstances. And let me tell you, there's some freaky stuff going on Dragonstone right now. I don't want to alarm anyone.
I want to hear about this. Tell me about this weirdness, because I hear rumors, but you're there, you're on the ground. Tell me what's going on with this Red Woman.
Right. Well, the Red Woman isn't here in Dragonstone right now, but she arrived in Dragonstone. Of course, Dragonstone was Stannis Baratheon's fortress before the death of his brother. Melisandre, this Red Woman, arrived, and she brought a new religion. Not entirely new, but there were some adherents previous. I think, I can't remember exactly, but there were some adherents previous. But how to put this? I mean, she brought monotheism on steroids. To the extent that there have been burnings, there have been, and not, so the good kind of burning where you burn books or something, burnings of actual people at her orders, and Stannis Baratheon seems to have adopted the basic precepts of her religion, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm not really a man of faith. I worship every god who comes my way. I'm happy to worship whatever red god this is. But they're a little bit fanatical about that over here. They seem to think that Renly, who is Stannis' younger brother, got his just desserts for defying some red god or something that they worship here. Some people would be alarmed by this, but I've seen a lot of stuff, so I can't say I'm that alarmed. But I mean, were people happy there in King's Landing when they learned Renly? I mean, Renly, everybody loved Renly, right? Renly was a fun guy. Were people there in King's Landing? Were they happy or alarmed when they heard that Renly had met a unfortunate end?
Well, it's always good when the enemies of the true king, King Joffrey, meet unfortunate ends. However, it does seem that this has now enabled the pretender heretic Stannis to combine forces with Renly's armies and head toward King's Landing, where I'm sitting right now. So this does not make me happy.
Right. Now, let me pause you here. Are you eating right now? I mean, are you well? I mean, are you in food and beer and so forth? I mean, I've heard some issues. Okay.
Of course. I'm the tightest Lannister fellow at the Lannister Enterprise Institute. Right. We do very well here.
Right.
So, thank you.
Right.
But thanks for asking that.
Well, it's important to me. It's important to me that you're okay. And if by some misfortune the city should be sacked, I just hope that they avoid the Lannister Enterprise Institute. But I mean, partially, I want a fellowship there sometime myself. I mean,
I really have no fear of that. People love pundits. Okay, that's something that has always been true, and I think will always be true. Is that if things change, I'm not saying they will change, but as you said, I mean, I can come up with arguments, for whomever. Right. I'm not saying I would, but
right. Well, we all have to appreciate a certain degree of flexibility. Speaking of which, how was that intern I sent you? Stevie? Was that his name? I can't remember.
The intern, yes. Very good.
Okay. Good.
Sadly dead.
Oh.
But was very good.
Hopefully, natural causes, or...
I'll save it for a Raven.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's probably for the best. Stannis is marching towards the city. By your account, the city seems more or less to be well defended. I'm sure Stannis will ground his armies to dust. Let's go back to this cannibal wolf king we have in the north, because, from my perspective, this guy is an underdog. Obviously he is the son of the traitor Ned Stark, traitor former hand of the king.
Yes.
And not a lot of people gave him a chance. He's 17 years old or something like that, some ridiculously young age. But it seems to me that despite all his disadvantages, despite all the problems that he's had, all this kid does is win. He's defeated Lannister armies on several occasions in several different situations. He seems to have this angry direwolf that follows him around, or maybe he sometimes changes into. There are lots of stories out there.
Rob, I know I'm probably wrong here, but it sounds almost like you're rooting for our enemies. I know that's wrong.
my desire to understand as much as I can about our enemies should not necessarily be mistaken as sympathy for our enemies. Listen, first I want to say that you're right, that most of the people who strive to understand or negotiate or discuss with either Stannis Baratheon or Robb Stark, I think we can probably say that they don't have the best interests of the realm at heart. But, I think at some certain level, in order to be a counter-rebellion expert, you have to understand something about the rebels, right? You have to understand how the rebels think in order to defeat, dismember, and disembowel the rebels. And so, in this case, I think it's important that we take some steps to try to understand and evaluate Robb Stark as military commander. And in this case, people aren't blind. The peasants may be revolting and the peasants may be uneducated, but they understand that Robb Stark is still out there with an army, right? And they understand that he seems to be, winning battles in the field against Lannister armies. And so, that sort of stuff can't just be wished away. And so, I don't want it to be understood as sympathies for our enemies, but, we have to deal with the fact that our enemies are out there and they have exacted a price in blood for us. So, why does Robb Stark keep winning? How does he keep winning how does he just keep winning if he is such a horrible person?
The dude turns into a wolf, okay? That's what I've heard, all right? And he's got this army of wolves, right? Mm-hmm. Right. And it just, the people are, just mad with fear of this crazy barbarian cannibal wolf turning into guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that explains a lot. Clearly the people want to be out from under his domination. They yearn and thirst for liberation at the hands of King Joffrey's army. That's the only way I can think to explain it. Mm-hmm. Is it more complicated?
I don't know. I don't know if it's more complicated. We probably need to send some people into the field and try to figure that out.
Yeah, right? Sure, reporting from the field, that's all fine. Mm-hmm. But, the only way I can possibly explain this is dark magic at work.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, we all can agree that there's been a fair amount of dark magic. As I suggested earlier, people are being burned. There's a guy being burned right outside my window right now. And I don't want to alarm you just in case at some future point you happen to be under the rule of Stannis Baratheon, his glory. But people are being burned, and you have to be very careful about what you say and do here on Dragonstone, and certainly in the parts of the realm. So Robb Stark was able to win some of his battles because he had made an agreement with Walder Frey, which allowed him to use the twins, allowed him to shift back and forth across a bridge, and right. And what I say was really
the traitor Walder Frey.
Right. It was an extremely treacherous, extremely traitorous, and a little bit clever maneuver that Robb Stark engaged in, and he managed to, of course, catch the king's. Jaime Lannister, and he, as a price for being able to use his bridge, was betrothed to Walder Frey's daughter. There are rumors, and I'm curious whether you've received any ravens to this account. That Robb Stark...
That Lord Stark is playing around, yes.
That Robb Stark is stepping out on his betrothed. So you have heard that. What have you heard? Are these scurrilous rumors? Or would it be irresponsible not to speculate?
No, I believe them entirely. It is completely unsurprising. The traitorous cannibal wolf man Robb Stark should also betray oaths he has made to his various bannermen. In this case, he promised to marry one of Walder Frey's daughters, and now is taking up with this other woman in his army. It's unsurprising, and I think it's a good lesson to Walder Frey and all the other lords who might put their trust in the traitorous Stark.
Right. It will certainly be earth-shattering, right? Because Robb Stark has put family really at the core of his campaign to be king. I mean, he has sort of made that front and center. He's put his mother out there. He talks about his father constantly.
Yep.
He talks about his sisters constantly. Who
are being treated extremely well, can I just say.
Oh, okay.
They love it here, both of them.
Okay, great. So they're being well treated, well fed, and so forth. I mean, so you can attest to that.
Absolutely. Any rumors that Sansa has been stripped and beaten in the court of the king is completely false, completely scurrilous. They're just more lies.
I was not even going to dignify that with even with rumor mongering.
I feel dirty even having done so.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right. No, I mean it's the most horrific thing, and the people of the North, our viewers in the North, should be assured that Sansa Stark and the other one, Arya Stark, are in fact in good condition. They are being housed by the Queen.
Absolutely.
The imp is
Just saw Arya the other day. Arya the other day, doing fine, loving it.
Oh, wonderful. Is the imp being kept away from them? I mean, is that part of his thing, or I mean, what's the situation there?
Yes, I would say yes.
All right, well that's entirely fair. So, sort of also on this Robb Stark and the North point, there have been some disquieting rumors, not just about sort of the personal failings of Robb Stark, but that there is another rebellion afoot. And that there are ill happenings at Winterfell. Now, have you heard anything about that?
Yes, actually, it seems that as kind of more evidence of that the gods look with ill favor on the traitorous rebellion of Robb Stark, that the Ironborn Prince Theon Greyjoy managed to take Winterfell, the seat of the North. And now controls it. I don't want to gloat here, but it kind of serves Robb Stark right. What do you think?
Well, what I have to say is it's a pretty craptastic king who can't protect his own capital while he's off campaigning, hundreds and hundreds of leagues away.
Right, you are.
Right. I mean, it's kind of a major issue if indeed Winterfell has fallen. And I received a very similar report to you that there is a major rebellion among the Ironborn. And I have to add that it shows a deep degree of, or it raises serious questions about the character of Robb Stark, that the person who led this attack on Winterfell appears to have been Theon Greyjoy, who was widely known as Robb Stark's best friend, who was a hostage of Ned Stark. I mean, if this is how Robb Stark's best friends think about him, and this is how much they are willing to serve him by taking his castle and taking his brothers hostage and undermining his every effort, I think that raises serious questions about what his kingship might look like. I mean,
I think that's totally true. I think that's absolutely correct. And I know pundits aren't supposed to make predictions, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and see nothing but success for Theon Greyjoy in the future. He is a rising star. I think he's just got a very, very bright future. I'm going to go ahead and just say that.
Well, I actually just took a look at the in-trade futures market, and the in-trade for Theon Greyjoy, Prince of Winterfell, 6 months from now, is currently only 35%. So, I mean, if you're that confident, you should probably go in there and wager some gold on that, because I think that, I can see your point. You make a good argument, and there's no reason that you shouldn't benefit if, in fact, that comes to pass. I do have to point out that the in-trade market currently has Stannis Baratheon at 38% for king and Joffrey Baratheon at only 28% for king 1 year from now. But that's probably just because the in-trade markets are wrong.
Well, let me just make a note to dispatch some gold cloaks to in-trade.
really, I mean, those people are just really hacks, and they deserve whatever happens to them. I can't say that hardly enough, especially if I ever find myself in King's Landing again. So even farther to the north, and again, we have received some disquieting ravens about this. And I mean, you probably haven't. Maybe you've heard about this. I don't know, but there have been some very alarming reports that to the north of the Wall, there are first wildlings massing. And for most people in Westeros, it's not an issue, right? I mean, the Wall is so far away that wildlings would be dead before they marched on them anyway. But nevertheless, this is an important fortification for the realm, and people are saying that wildlings are massing under some king, and I forget his name, Rance Mater or something like that, or maybe Rancid Mother. I don't recollect the name exactly, but there's some king beyond the Wall that these wildlings are massing around, and there have even been some. And again, it's one of these rumors I hesitate to give any credence to, and even report on a program such as this, that there have been sightings of the undead north of the Wall. Of course, this is something that the realm has not seen in many dozens of centuries. Right? It would truly be an alarming thing. I mean, what is your take on these rumors, right? I mean, is this just nonsense that we shouldn't pay any attention to, or is this the vengeance of the gods upon the rebellion of the North? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm personally very skeptical, but I should say that I'm all in favor of these sorts of rumors, as a means to keeping people frightened and docile.
Right.
So I'm kind of torn. So sure, by all means, let's talk about it. Let's get people talking about it. But me personally, I don't buy it. Undead. Right. Come on.
Right. I mean, it makes very little sense. I mean, can I derive from what you just said that you are in favor of the recent initiative that was spearheaded, I mean, potentially by your own think tank, to engage in propaganda directed towards citizens of Westeros? I mean, this is something that you feel is a compelling necessity?
Well, you call it propaganda. That's kind of a pejorative term.
Right.
It's, just kind of letting people know what's out there, what may or may not be going on, but probably is.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's basically from my education and at House Strauss, there was, there's kind of that small group of us that can understand what's really going on.
Right.
That are entitled to rule, that are entitled to understand the secrets of history and philosophy, etc. And then there's everyone else, and they need to be fed these sorts of stories so that we can kind of go about our business of ruling.
Right. So the others are basically one of these kinds of stories that we use to keep people in line, right, basically. And this allows us to keep the Wall up there, which is sort of a place where we distribute unwanteds and miscreants without having to execute too many people, right? And so,
right. It's an act of mercy, in fact.
Right.
Yes.
Right. You may have had conjugal relations with your master's mule, and so that being a crime, it would be better just to send you to the Wall than to do some other horrific thing to you.
Right. I mean, if there's no threat north of the Wall, that just demonstrates how good we are to create this entire enterprise, wherein we avoid having to execute all these people.
Right.
I mean, that's what a decent society we've created here.
Right. And I would even go so far as to say that the myth of this Wall essentially allows us to be better people. Right. That believing this myth, gives us a certain sense of purpose. It makes people feel like they're living for something. If we didn't have this myth of the Wall, then people might just go about doing what they want, and we know how much of a disaster that would be. You'd have all sorts of horrific nonsense. I mean, look at the other continent and look at how bad things are there. I mean, I think we're in agreement. Neither one of us is ever going to see an other, or so that they call them, an undead. And, this is all such nonsense. And I would also say that I would not at all rule out the possibility that the Starks have a hand in this sort of thing, because
good point.
It is well known that a bastard of Ned Stark, such a paragon of propriety who had a bastard named Jon Snow, is well known that bastard is currently with the Night's Watch at the Wall. It is well known that his uncle, Ned Stark's brother, is also with the Night's Watch. All of these rumors may simply be an effort to undermine the kingdom. So,
what a huge coincidence! Yes,
it would be a remarkable coincidence if the time we were beset in civil war, undead were striking. And I barely even want to talk about this, but again, ships have been coming into Dragonstone, and people have been saying things, and so I feel that I have to relate this.
Okay.
There are rumors that a Targaryen has survived on the other continent. And not simply has she survived, this would be Daenerys Targaryen, who is the daughter of the late king. Not only did she survive her marriage to Khal Drogo, who apparently is dead now, I guess the Dothraki do that to themselves all the time. Anyway, there is a rumor, which, I cannot put much credence in, but, we should report it anyway, that there are dragons, that this Daenerys Targaryen has somehow acquired, or even in some of these stories, birthed dragons, and that she is assembling an army to return to Westeros and reclaim the crown for the Targaryen family. I mean, have you heard anything about that at King's Landing, or these rumors floating around King's Landing?
The only thing I've heard, and I heard this at a background briefing I and a small number of other analysts were invited to at the small council, was that the Targaryens were finished, they are no threat, and that the possibility of any Targaryen ever coming back to lay claim to the throne had been dealt with with complete finality.
Right.
So, as I said, on the one hand, I think certain rumors and threats are useful, but I think this idea of dragons, I mean, come on. I mean, undead is one thing, but dragons, please.
Right. Really something else entirely. It would really be useful. I don't know if you've ever thought this through, but we have all these dead enders, and they retreat to, the farthest reaches of the earth where there's no state authority, where they try to escape the reach of the King of Westeros, whether he be Baratheon or Lannister, whether he be Baratheon, which Joffrey Baratheon clearly is, and I didn't mean to suggest he might be a Lannister. Wouldn't it be good if there were some kind of, what's the word I'm searching for? Technology by which we could reach out and touch these people, right? Where we could just sort of reach out and even, like, from the sky, like, just strike them down as they were plotting some sort of vengeance or terroristic activities against the rightful rulers of Westeros. It really seems like, even against people who are technically the subjects of the king. I mean, it would still seem to be useful to have some sort of tool along those lines that would allow us to carry out that kind of campaign in the ungoverned spaces of the world. I mean, people should be working on that. I guess the masters should be working on something that will allow us to do that, so we don't have to deal with the Daenerys Targaryens of the world in the future, unless they should take power, at which point I will obviously swear filthy.
Quite right. I couldn't agree more. It's the king needs a longer hand. Is I guess what I would say.
Right.
To that.
Right.
But
to close, and we've talked about a lot of scurrilous rumors tonight. Stuff that probably, and I'd like to say that we've dismissed these things, right? That this conversation should be taken as a way of putting to bed a number of myths. The myth of Joffrey is the juvenile psycho, right? The myth of the others, the myth of Robb Stark. Really what we're doing tonight is busting myths, the myth of the dragons and so forth.
Absolutely.
And so, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine with me. But in the short time we have remaining, could you comment at all upon the notion sort of that is being pushed by the Stannis people, and let me tell you, here in Dragonstone, everyone believes
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
Okay, well, if you know where I'm going, if you could comment on that.
Well, it's this ridiculous rumor about Jaime and Cersei, and I'm not even supposed to say anything. Nobody's supposed to say anything because it's obviously untrue, but still sort of kind of plausible. And I think someone's here actually.
Yeah, could you elaborate on that kind of plausible point that you just mentioned there?
Actually, I'm gonna have to stop this right now. I think some people are coming into my house, so I'm gonna have to say goodbye.
All right, okay. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Matt, Matt, are you there? All right. Well, Blogging Heads viewers, thank you for watching. I'm sure that we'll be back very soon to talk about the glorious victory of Joffrey Baratheon. I'm sorry about the technical problems there at the end. That seems to have cut Matthew of House Duss off. But once again, we would love to have you here again, and thank you very much for watching.